all. Now we have Professor Prashant, KG Prashant with us. So he's from Tallinn University. Apart from that, he's also a head for additive manufacturing laboratory. And already I have communicated the speaker's details with you. And one point is he had rich experience in additive manufacturing. So without much delay, I welcome Professor Prashant, and I request all of you to make use of this opportunity. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction.
So maybe at
Let,
the end of the day, at the end of the
yeah,
presentation, there will be a short poll for student based on the
mhm,
presentation slides. So I request you to make use of the slides, and this is part of our curriculum. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
yeah, yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you again for the brief introduction, and let's go on to the topic. We'll be dealing today laser-based additive manufacturing methods. So I am not sure whether you have been through the different classification of additive manufacturing, but briefly, let's. There are several ways one can classify the additive manufacturing processes, either based upon the process itself or based upon the materials used, deposition mechanism, or the energy used. What we are going to see today is a combination of the deposition mechanism and the energy which is going to be used. For instance, if it comes to the deposition mechanism, the way in which you deposit the raw material, either it can be in the form of a powder or it can be in the form of a wire. That is where you classify the additive manufacturing process. For instance, it can be, of course, everywhere, since this is additive manufacturing, it will be layer by layer. That is clear. But whether it is going to be powder form or it's going to be wire form is the question. And even if it is going to be a powder form, whether it is going to be a bed process or a fed process, and again another question. For instance, we can have a wire feed. There are some wire based additive manufacturing processes, and we also have powder feed. It can be the processes like electron beam melting, selective laser melting, selective laser sintering, direct energy deposition like the lens process, and so on. Of course, here you can divide this is let's put it as powder based process, and this can be further divided into powder fed and powder bed process. From the name, it is very clear that you have a powder bed on which the manufacturing will take place, or you are going to add the powder which is fed coaxially, and the process is going to continue. So it is known as a powder fed process. The powder bed process, you don't feed the powder, but the powder is deposited, and so you have a powder bed. That is the two difference between the process, and we'll see what are the powder fed and powder bed process as we go along. Either so the basic classification what we are going to see today is either using a powder, either a bed or a fed process, and using different energy source. In the morning, what we are going to see is the energy source, which is going to be laser. It, the afternoon session will be looking into the electron beam based processes. So when it comes to laser based process, we have few categories that users effectively uses laser. At the moment, most of the additive manufacturing process use a laser in the form of red color, and some of these processes are selective laser melting SLM or laser based powder bed fusion process. So this is laser based powder bed fusion process. The name comes here because we are using laser as the energy source, so it's called as laser based. We are using powder as the raw material source, so it's powder, and we are going to use a powder bed system. It means the powder is going to be deposited layer by layer on top of the existing powder bed. So it is powder bed process. Since fusion or melting is going to take place during the process, we introduce the term fusion. So the name of this process, according to the ASTM standard, is laser based powder bed fusion process, or known as LPBF. but commonly it is also known as selective laser melting. When it's called a selective laser melting, it is because you are going to melt the powder bed selectively based upon the CAD data using a laser source. That's why it came as selective laser melting. But then when it is standardized, it was called as laser based powder bed fusion process. There is another category where you use a laser based source but fed process. Of course, you use also fusion. So they are laser based powder fed processes, or you can also call them laser based powder fed fusion processes. And one such process is direct energy deposition. We will see how these processes work individually as we go along. And the third process is laser based powder bed process. You can see the term that you can see here, notice that the fusion term is missing. It means that we are still using laser as a source. We are using powder as raw material. We are using powder bed process. So you have a powder bed and the powder is going to be deposited on the top of the powder bed every time, but we are not going to have fusion. Instead of fusion, we are going to have a sintering process. So this is sintering. So we just call it laser based powder bed process. We don't specify here what kind of process it is, but when you specify clearly, it is selective laser sintering. So you can see the difference here, either selective laser melting or selective laser sintering. Between these two processes, everything looks the same. You use a laser source, you use a powder as raw material, you use a powder bed deposition mechanism, but instead of fusion in selective laser melting, we are going to use just sintering as our operation in case of selective laser sintering process. I hope everyone might be aware what a sintering process is. If not, I just briefly explain when we go to the when we go ahead. So we'll start with selective laser melting process. Of course, selective laser melting is one of the additive manufacturing processes or additive manufacturing technologies that is prevalent in the field for the last 30 years, but it is gaining momentum nowadays because of the industrial demands where you try to reduce the raw material usage, or try to maximize the raw material usage, try to reduce the wastage during the production, and try to produce near net shape components every time you want to produce a industrial component. That's where these additive manufacturing processes kicks in. And since selective laser melting process can fabricate metals, it has gained a lot of attention recently. So basically, it is used to produce three-dimensional metal parts with complex shape and geometry. I would say it can produce theoretically any shape without restriction. However, there are some restrictions based upon the intricacy you are going to introduce, based upon the hardware uh, capabilities of the device, and so on. But in principle, theoretically, any shape can be produced. Of course, there will be size restriction based upon the size of the building chamber. This is again layer by layer powder bed process. That's why it is selective laser melting or laser based powder bed fusion process. So the process as such is divided into two categories or two steps, which we can divide. One is the computational part, and second is going to be the actual process itself. Second is going to be the actual process itself. You see the computational part here, and then actual process here. In the computational part, we have to be carefully design the CAD data, and we have to treat the CAD data in such a way that the machine where you feed the CAD data can read the data and the information layer by layer so that it can order or it can dictate the laser to melt selectively in the powder bed. That's the first part. The second part is going to be the actual printing process itself, where the laser is going to melt the powder selectively as dictated by the CAD data. So the first stage, first you have to produce a CAD file which actually resembles the final product to be produced. So you want to replicate the component in the form of a CAD data. And once you replicate the component, what you have is the bulk data that any CAD software can read. But when you go to the additive software, it needs the information layer by layer because it's a layer by layer process. And before we go to splitting the data layer by layer, we have to consider another fact that any material which is produced in an additive manufacturing process is produced over a substrate plate, or it is known as a base plate. So we have a, if we are going to produce a material called steel, we are going to produce it over a steel plate. If we are going to produce aluminum, we are going to produce over an aluminum plate. So once the part is produced, for instance, we are producing a rod, the part is produced over a substrate plate, we need to remove the part from the substrate plate easily without hassles or difficulties. In order to have an easy removal of the part from the plate, we normally introduce what we call as a structures or support structures. So this has to be added to the three-dimensional CAD model. So the second step is to introduce support structures to the part which is going to produce. Support structures are nothing but halo structures which are introduced at the bottom of the part. For example, if this is the part, and then we introduce some kind of a halo structure at the bottom of the part which is going to be in conjunction with the substrate plate. So when you want to remove the component P here, you just need to chop off this halo sections. Since it is halo, it is easy to chop off so that you can remove the part from the substrate plate. And once you have this data, this is the entire data that the laser needs for the production of the three-dimensional component. But you need to feed the data laser by laser, and so we have to undergo an operation called as slicing. Slicing is nothing but dividing the three-dimensional data, the whole information, into layer by layer depending upon the layer thickness we are going to use for the process. For example, if you are going to use a layer thickness of 30 micrometer, we need to divide the data in the form of 30 micrometer thickness. So the thicker the layers, the easier or the smaller will be the volume of the data because the information what you give will be reduced. So finer the layer, more the information, more the volume of the data that is going to be generated. So try to make sure that you try to reduce the number of intricacies so that you will be able to reduce the information required for number of layers. Once you have the sliced data, now this data is in conjunction with the machine software where you will be able to use the data to produce the material or produce the component layer by layer without problems. This is the first step in the selective laser melting process, or be it be any additive manufacturing process. You have this as the first step where you have the CAD data, where with the CAD data you are trying to add the support structures, and once you have the support structure you need layer by layer information. So you are going to slice the data depending upon the layer thickness, depending upon the powder dimensions and so on, and this sliced data is now ready for use in the selective laser melting process. The second stage, it is going to be the actual process itself, where you are going to fabricate the three-dimensional component from the CAD data, which is already sliced. I'll give you one example here. Whenever you take a CAD data, it can be in any format, we don't care. But when it comes to introduction of support structure and slicing, we always use a format called star.stl. This is known as standard tessellated language, or it is also called a stereolithographic language format. Once we have the STL file, then we go for slicing, and once we have the sliced data ready, depending upon the machine, you are going to have a different extension. For example, if you are going to use a selective laser melting device from the manufacturer SLM Solutions, you will have an extension FAB. or you will have an extension MTT. If it is from a different other manufacturer, you will have different extensions. You are not going to have the same extensions. This one has to be very careful because normally we treat the data in STL format, and the final stage you have to convert it into machine readable format, and every manufacturer will have their own machine readable formats. In the actual printing process, what happens is you are going to spread a thin layer of powder like here. The powder is going to be kept in a hopper, and from the hopper you are going to spread a thin layer of powder over a substrate plate or a metal plate. Once you have the powder spread over the thin layer of substrate, you are going to illuminate the laser selectively as dictated by the CAD data. So the CAD data is going to dictate the spots where the laser has to get illuminated so that you will have a selective melting of the powder bed. So we are going to have certain kind of parameters that is going to define the laser power, laser speed, the thickness of the layers, and so on. We'll see in the next few slides. Once we have the particular layer which is melted using the laser selectively, the powder is going to be deposited again on the selectively melted layer. You can see again the powder is going to be deposited. Once it is deposited, then it is an iterative process where the laser is going to selectively melt. Again the powder is going to be deposited. Again the laser is going to melt. Powder is deposited, and the process continues until the entire component is going to be built. One important care people have to take care is that whenever you build a component using a selective laser melting process, we have to be careful enough such that the time required for building the component depends on the height of the height of the part to be produced, and not on the on the cross sectional volume. So you can dump n number of parts in the cross sectional volume, which is going to add only del x amount of time, unlike having just one taller part. Then it is you are going to accelerate the time for production. You can see here a small clipping which shows how a Certification melting process melts the powder bed and how the materials are produced. Here we are going to see the rods are being produced, rods of let's say 4 millimeter diameter are being produced using certification melting process. Since rods are going to stand vertical over the substrate plate, what you are going to see over the cross section is just in the form of a 2D, that is going to be circles. You can see the small clipping here, how it performs. So the laser is melting the powder bed selectively, and then the powder is going to be spread over the powder bed or the substrate, and the laser again melts the powder bed selectively. If you carefully see here, there are 8 into 7, nearly 56 tensile rods that produced at no time. Since the rods are going to be taller, around 60 to 70 millimeter in length, it takes 3 to 4 hours to build the entire job of let's say 56 samples. Even if you're going to have only one sample, it is going to take 3 hours. If you're going to have 56 samples, it's going to take maybe 3 hours and 15 minutes. If you're going to have hundreds of samples, it's going to take maybe 3.5 hours to 4 hours. The height is going to be critical, or not the volume, or the number of samples you plug inside the volume is not so critical when it comes to the time and cost. So basically, in a selective laser melting process, if you can draw a small schematic, you have a table or you have a chamber. The chamber houses the let's just a moment. So basically you have a chamber. Inside the chamber, you are going to have a bed where you are going to have substrate. Substrate is to be able to move up and down during the process. The entire chamber is sealed or entire chamber is closed under an argon atmosphere or a nitrogen atmosphere depending upon the material to be used. If they are going to be very reactive, we use the argon atmosphere. If they are less reactive, we are going to use nitrogen atmosphere. And then you have the laser source which is somewhere here, which is going to be scanned using several scanners, and then it will illuminate here on the top of the substrate plate or top of the powder bed where the substrate plate is going to be kept. The laser is generally transferred from one place to the other using special mirrors so that you will not use the or lose the power of laser on the way. And the most important thing is you always have a flow of gas which is going to be argon from this shape this side to the other side, because during the laser melting, if you are going to have some kind of fine dust particles, if you're going to have some kind of burnt particles, these particles, because of the difference in the density between the bulk component and these will fly off from the surface of the component. So it is easy process before removal of the support and other things. So these gases go on from this direction to this direction. With this brief introduction, we'll try to go on slightly onto selective laser sintering. As I was discussing, there is no huge difference between selective laser melting and sintering. The process is going to be the same. If you see the chamber is going to be the same, everything is going to be the same. Laser is going to come from here, excepting that the laser melting, fusing the powder bed and selective laser melting, the laser is used in such a way that it is just sinters the powder bed and does not melt the powder bed. That's why it is known as selective laser sintering process. As the name suggests, as it is very similar to selective laser melting, no fusion but only sintering. Since it is going to undergo only sintering, you can process
Sir,
theoretically
sir,
all cases.
sir,
Yeah,
just give me, sir, we are still in, okay, now slide change, sir.
okay.
Just now
So,
change. Okay, thank you, sir.
sure. Yeah. Since we are dealing with sintering, we are not dealing with melting and fusion. We will theoretically we will be able to process all kinds of materials in a selective laser sintering process, including metals, polymers, ceramics, so on. One major difference between melting and sintering is that when you use a selective laser melting process, when the melt cools down to room temperature, the rate at which it cools down is very drastic, and hence we will not be able to produce all kinds of materials using selective laser melting, because if you are going to cool a ceramic material, there are two problems processing ceramic material with selective laser melting. One, these ceramic materials will have very high melting point, and reaching very high melting point is going to be difficult in a normal melting process, but in selective laser melting you are it is possible to go to higher melting points. But when you are going to melt the ceramics during solidification, it is going to prepare or it is going to introduce lot of cracks, both solidification cracks and melting cracks. So because the cooling rate is so high, when it comes to selective laser sintering, since we are not fusing the powder, even though there's no complete fusion. There will not be enough chance that you are going to cool the Melpool at very high cooling rate like the certiolation melting process. So the cooling rate here is going to be very slow, and so cooling any ceramic material, any metal, any polymer, this process should not have a problem, unlike the certiolation melting process. That's why I said that we can process all kinds of materials here, right from polymer to metals to ceramic. And then part the process generally involves very long time for sintering, because sintering is a low temperature diffusion process which takes place in the range of zero point 0.5 to zero point 0.6 times the melting point of the material. So sintering is a long time diffusion based thermal process. And during diffusion, generally the porosity present between the powder particles are driven out to reduce the amount of pores in the final component. So there are several mechanisms there exists that deals with the gel the porosity with the time and temperature. So what happens is when you start sintering, when you start applying pressure, there will be some kind of pressure generated here so that they can test and will be accommodated as a and the pores will be getting accommodated until they become very big pores and used to catastrophic failure. Otherwise, they used to keep on accommodating smaller smaller pores. There are several mechanisms that are involved because sintering as such seems to be a very simple process, but the mechanisms involved are quite a number. I'm not going into the every details of the mechanism, but I just want to highlight the different mechanisms that are involved. Is going to be first plastic flow, grain boundary diffusion, surface diffusion, evaporation and condensation. There will be volume diffusion, grain boundary diffusion, yeah, evaporation and condensation. These are the five main mechanisms. One has to be very sure of when you go with the selective laser sintering process. And another note you have to take into account is that whenever you go for either a selective laser melting or a selective laser sintering process, you need to make sure that you don't use volatile materials or materials having very low boiling points, because when you use an aluminum based alloy, you may be able to get it unarmed, but these volatile materials has very low melting point, and if your parameters are set in such a way that it offers very low melting point, then you will be melting the whole kind of, which is not desired. And when it comes to the third process, which is the direct energy process, which is very similar to selective laser melting process, except powder bed, you have a powder fed. So instead of having a powder bed where you have layer of powder deposited one over the other, you are going to have the powder which is fed from two sides, and laser is going to melt the component, melt the powder bed, and deposit it over and just moves away from its present position. Of course, this is a relatively faster process compared to selective laser melting, and very fast process compared to selective laser sintering, but it also has its own advantage and disadvantage. For example, since the powder is flowing coaxially with the laser, you will be able to have multiple dyes flowing the powder from the coaxial nozzles, and two different elements or multiple elements can be produced in the same build job. So it means that you'll be able to produce functionally graded materials or bimetals or trimetals, whatever composition you, whatever composition that's are not theoretically possible to be produced using this kind of exotic ways. These are possible now using the process like additive manufacturing or selective laser melting. So when it comes to the equipment, it is very fairly straightforward. Like the selective laser melting, you have a let's say you have a chamber. The chamber should be inside a vacuum or an atmosphere depending upon the where it will be used. And you have the laser beam coming coaxially from the sorry, you have the laser beam coming coaxially from the laser head. And you have the powder hopper where you have the powder feed through nozzles. You can have n number of nozzles you wish with n number of powder materials you can introduce. If you want a single material, you just have one powder or multiple powder nozzle with the same composition, or you have multiple nozzles and multiple composition if you want to go for functionally graded or novel materials. You may also have a parameter to temperature at intervals, but which is not fairly needed. So before any process, where when you look into the process parameters are going to be very crucial. There are several process parameters that are associated with these three processes, but we're not going to complete details, but we are going to see the main process parameters that are very crucial. So when you saw the clipping where you saw the tensile samples were built on a powder bed, you just see a kind of a circle where the laser is melting the whole area. But it happens in the form of small melting sequences or known as melt sequence or hatches. So within a surface of let's say 4 millimeter, you will have nearly 5 hatches or 5 melting sequences. This is called as the melting sequence, and there will be always an overlap between two melting sequences in order to avoid any discontinuity or porosity from the powder bed. So you can see how it is produced. So you have individual melt sequence, and there will be several melt sequences within a single layer, and there will be several layers within one bed, and finally you have this. And at the same time, the way in which you develop the hatches, they are known as style, and these hairstyle can be modulated by 4 different ways, depending upon the material, depending upon the process parameters, depending on the properties needed and so on. The hatches are going to play a significant role in dictating the mechanical properties, both the hatch style and the distance, hatch distance, which is the distance between two hatches. So we take the midpoint here, that is one hatch distance. So when you before that, also I want to emphasize that the process parameters what you use is very similar to welding process parameter. If you have gone through welding metallurgy course, where the energy which is supplied to the powder bed is a function of laser power which is P, laser scan speed which is Vs, hatch distance which is going to be H, and T is going to be the laser thickness, Apart from these parameters, the important things are the laser, laser source. Sorry, the hat style, has distance, and there are some hardware related parameters which we are not dealing here. So the main parameters involved are the energy density parameters, that is laser power, laser scan speed, has distance, and the layer thickness, which is defined as energy density. And you also have the hat style and the uh, hatch orientation. That is going to be also very crucial. So if you are going to have a very stable parameter, you are going to see a very stable melt pool in like the places here. Very stable melt pool. If you are not going to have good parameters, you are going to have instability in the melt pool, or you do not form a melt pool at all. So we always try to find a region where you have a stable melt pool in order to produce a three-dimensional component. If the melt pool is not going to be stable, you always end up with samples. This is a sample which has to be in the form of a cuboidal shape, but since the melt pool is not going to be stable, it cracks. It does not resemble the CAD data. This has to be in this shape. If it is going to be cylinder, you can always see the cylinder comes out somehow and is not going to be very stable. And this parameter optimization is going to be common for cell-to laser melting, cell-to laser sintering, and direct energy deposition. Only thing is that in sintering we are not going to fuse the material. In other process, you are going to fuse the material. In cell-to laser sintering, what is more crucial is going to be the sintering time and temperature, because that is going to be finally dictate your porosity level in the porosity level in this component. If you want to have a very dense component, you need to define the sintering parameter in such a way that you can completely eliminate the porosity. So we'll see the benefits and drawbacks of cell-to-laser melting, or in general you can take this for all the three processes. It's very flexible for new material development because you can easily optimize the process parameters unlike the other additive manufacturing processes. So easy to work with new powders, and even fine powders we have no problem in dealing with as long as it is going to be relatively flowable. It is easy to remove the powder after production of the component, unlike the electron beam melting process. We will see when we go to the electron beam melting why it is going to be easy. Very short dead time between two melting sequences. Even if the job is interrupted, it can be easily programmed again based upon the coordinates data which is always available. And some of the drawbacks is very expensive process, and the time for production depends upon the length of the process. Larger the component, more the time it consumes, and hence more the cost of the process will be. It is always very strong support structures in order to produce the metallic components, and most importantly it will lead to grain refinement, or it will lead to reduction in the stresses when we use a electron sorry since the process has very high rate of cooling, it leads to very fine microstructures, and since it leads to very fine microstructures, it will lead to very high strength compared to the conventional when the same material produced by conventional manufacturing. And we need also some kind of build plates to build the material. So you need to, for titanium powder, you need titanium based build plate, which is going to be an expensive affair as well. So in general, I can conclude in such a way saying that if you are going to have a component with added functionalities and intricate shapes to reduce the dead weight of an existing component, additive manufacturing process like cell-to-laser melting or direct energy deposition is going to be a crucial process that can be employed. But again, it depends upon the amount of intricacy and other things that is involved. So when it comes to applications, people have been employing these laser-based process for wide variety of applications, right from automobile, aerospace, dentistry, biomedical, any industrial application you think of. You can introduce these additive manufacturing process to reduce the dead weight of the component, to improve the functionality of the process. So with this, I would like to summarize the session saying that laser-based additive manufacturing processes has its own advantage, and there are three different laser-based processes, that is circular laser melting, circular laser sintering, and direct energy deposition. However, the mechanism of deposition might be different, but all three processes work in a similar working principle and have leads to very high cooling rates, especially circular laser melting and direct energy deposition. You can process all kinds of metals. Generally, polymers and ceramics are not processed using these processes, but in circular laser melting, you can also circular laser sintering, you can also process polymer and ceramics, and these processes are cost efficient if you are going to introduce added functionalities and trying to reduce the dead weight of the component by making the shapes intricate and complicated. With this, I would like to wind up the session. If you have any questions, let me know. Let's spare a few minutes for that.
Yes, students, if you have any question, please you can raise your voice or you can post a question in chat box also. We have another 3 minutes left.